Good afternoon, everyone, and welcome. I'm Commissioner Deborah Shore, and it is my great pleasure Thank you. It's my great pleasure, alongside my fellow co-chair, Ambassador Faye Hartog-Levin, to welcome you to the Openlands 2021 Annual Luncheon. Before we begin the program, we want to first acknowledge that Chicago is the traditional homeland of the Council of the Three Fires, the Odawa, Ojibwe, and Potawatomi nations. Many other Native American tribes, such as the Miami, Ho-Chunk, Sac, and Fox, also called this area home. Located at the intersection of several great waterways, the land naturally became a site of travel, trade, and healing. Native Americans continue to call this area home, and today, Chicago hosts the third largest urban Native American community, where residents still honor their heritage, practice their traditions, and care for the land and waters.
We've gathered today to honor Senator Dick Durbin, whom I admire deeply and am grateful to call a friend. He consistently makes us proud with his authenticity and his leadership. The senator is a true believer in the power of people coming together to get work done. So in that spirit, we would like to recognize the many business, government, and civic leaders, elected officials, organizations, and communities represented in this room and virtually, who make it possible for all of us to live our lives with access to green spaces. We wish we could acknowledge all of you individually, but with our commitment to ending on time today, we can't recognize each of you by name. Please know that we truly appreciate your support and endorsement of Openlands. The world has changed, as have our gatherings, so whether you are joining us virtually or here at the Hilton, we thank you for your commitment to our land, water, wildlife, and people. And I'd like to congratulate my co-chair, Deborah, on the wonderful news of her appointment by President Biden to serve as EPA's Region 5 Administrator. Deborah's going to be terrific. We'd also like to extend a very special thanks to our sponsors, among them BMO Harris Bank and Fred Eichner for their emerald sponsorship of today's annual luncheon. We're grateful to all of the donors who have made a commitment to Openlands work through a generous contribution to today's event. Please join me in thanking our sponsors.
Now, it's our great pleasure to introduce and welcome Openlands President and CEO, Jerry Adelman.
Thank you. Well, good afternoon. Wow, what a joy to be with all of you in this room and with so many others who are joining us by Zoom. It really brings back the spirit of our Openlands Annual Luncheon that really is the reunion of the conservation community. And so thank you all for being with us today, and thank you, friends, partners, and supporters, for all you do to support Openlands and conservation throughout our region, state, nation, and world, many of you. I would argue that the last 2 years have been the most challenging of our generation. There's been a trifecta of health, social, and climate environmental crises that we've never experienced before. And it's created so much stress and challenges in our daily lives as individuals, as communities, as a nation and world. But what we have done is turn to nature in unprecedented numbers. And why? Because nature gives us solace. It provides both benefits for our personal and community health. It also inspires us and helps us spiritually and emotionally in so many ways. And to me, that's one of the great insights, that nature is not a luxury, it's essential. And it needs to be part of our lives, close to where we live, and at all different scales. And Openlands, we're a regional land conservation group. Our geography more or less covers the footprint of that very powerful network called Chicago Wilderness, which is over 250 conservation leaders, public and private, who are collectively working to shape a green vision for this broad, in their case, 4-state metro area. But it's this land surrounding the southern shore of our Great Lake, Michigan. And at Openlands, we care about that web of green as a regional player at all scales. But central to our work, really at the core, are people and collaborations, partnerships. And this has been true, really, since our founding by the Welfare Council of Metropolitan Chicago back in 1963. We always work with diverse people in dynamic partnerships. So at the regional scale, we look at big issues, land use planning, transportation decisions, things that impact the natural world. And our position is that the green infrastructure, our critical habitats and natural areas and parks and rivers and streams and so forth, that they're removed from the development equation, that they help shape the nature and future of growth in our region. We also get, on a regional scale, directly involved in protecting land, in buying it and restoring it. But we also work very much on the ground, with projects, always with partners, always with community, but projects that illustrate the best principles, the best practices, and often actually become models that others emulate. But one of our kind of core qualities is that we're persistent and we take the long view. And what I'd like to do is just share with you a few examples from this past year of some of the projects that illustrate kind of the breadth and scope of what we do as a regional land conservation organization. So for over 5 years, we and others have advocated for an urban forestry advisory board here in Chicago. We have a crisis with our urban forest. The percentage of tree canopy has gone down, not up, from 19% to 16%. It's one of the lowest in the country, lower than big cities like LA or New York. And unfortunately, there's very little coordination within city agencies. And so sometimes live and healthy trees, old trees, are being cut down unnecessarily for sewer or water mains or other projects, in large part because there isn't a good coordinated framework and a policy. And so this Urban Forestry Advisory Board would bring together all of the city players, but also with forestry experts from around our city and region and community leaders to make sure that we're leveraging limited resources and that we're really addressing this tremendous challenge that we face. And so the advocacy for that was extraordinary, and I certainly want to thank our tree keepers who have persistently fought for this, and just amazing. But I also want to acknowledge the leadership of Mayor Lightfoot and Alderpersons Waguespack, Nugent, and Cardenas, who are real leaders in getting this ordinance passed. We talk a lot about collaboration and partnership at Openlands. Why? Because it's the only way we get it done, quite frankly. When you cover a geography as large as ours, there's just so much to do, and to sustain that work, you have to have the ownership of the people who live there, who benefit from it. And so a project that, to me, is just iconic and represents that strength and power is work that's underway right now along the Little Calumet River in Chicago's southeast side. leaders and residents from that community have come together, and they're shaping a vision for a lot of vacant, derelict land along the river, a holistic vision that includes, among other things, community gathering places, community gardens, just access to the river. You can't even see it. And this is all part of a regional wonderful resource called the African American Heritage Water Trail, a 7-mile canoeing and kayaking trail that begins at Beaubien Woods and goes all the way to Robbins, and showcases extraordinary chapters in the history of African Americans in our city and region, including the site of the Tun Farm, a designated Underground Railroad site, the birthplace of environmental justice, and in Robbins, the airport where the Tuskegee Airmen trained, for World War II. The lead local partners who are championing this and really shaping the program include the Little Calumet Underground Railroad Project, People for Community Recovery, We Keep You Rolling Bike and Wellness Group, and Golden Gate Homeowners Association. Now at Openlands, we're working with other partners to help the community realize this grand vision. And that includes, the forest preserves of Cook County, Neighbor Space, the City of Chicago, Friends of the Chicago River, and the Field Museum. So it's really a model of leverage and collaboration that I think can influence how we think about other sections of the river and connecting people to this extraordinary resource. We do a lot with environmental education at Openlands, and our two major kind of focuses are developing spaces where that can happen, but also developing tools, and tools that allow youth really to connect to the wonders of nature close to where they live, right outside their homes. Maybe it's the tree outside of their apartment or house, in the green schoolyard, in a neighborhood park. And one of those volunteer-driven programs that's been so impactful is called Birds in My Neighborhood. And since 2013, over 10,000 school children have connected with nature through birds in 60 schools in the city and the broader region. I think all of us during COVID came to realize that, wow, we're on a major flyway here. I mean, it's just extraordinary. Resident birds and birds that pass through. And as we've, kind of suffered with quarantine and so forth, we've looked more carefully and we've discovered the wonder of it all. Well, obviously, you can imagine the impact that has on young children's lives. So in terms of spaces, just this morning, there was dedication of one of our Space to Grow schools. That's the Arnold Morales Academy, which is in the South Chicago neighborhood. So as many of you know, so many of Chicago's schools are, the schoolyards are covered with asphalt and concrete. Heat islands, exacerbating flooding issues. After all, we're built on a swamp. And hostile environments for youth. And so we've partnered with the Healthy Schools campaign to develop a very innovative program that would not happen but for our capital partners. And that's the the Metropolitan Water Reclamation District of Greater Chicago, the City of Chicago, and Chicago Public Schools. And so totally transform these campuses where students can learn, they can play, they can connect with nature. But also when school's not in session, then they become neighborhood parks. But very importantly, and this is the genius of it in a way, it also addresses in dramatic ways climate issues, especially related to flooding and heat islands. But with regard to flooding, when there are serious storms here, these green schoolyards absorb literally millions of gallons of water, preventing it from going in people's neighboring basements. So this year we'll finish the first phase of Space to Grow, 34 schools. By 2030, we hope we can increase that to 100. It's already been a model across the country, showcased in the White House, emulated in cities around the country, and even the world. The city of Paris and Rotterdam both have adopted programs based on our model. So it's very exciting. We know that nature-based solutions to climate are so significant, and they also directly impact the quality of life in neighborhoods, many that are suffering most from the impact of climate. And, within that context, large landscapes also play a very important role. And this year is a very special year for prairies. Medewan celebrates its 25th, and this was the first national tallgrass prairie in the nation. It's the largest holding actually within the four-state Chicago wilderness region. And what it does, to address loss of biodiversity, carbon sequestration, stormwater management, all these other things, but also providing an extraordinary resource for millions of people in the metropolitan area. Bison, in fact, have actually been, reintroduced. So Philip Juris, a marvelous artist, did a fabulous exhibition of his prairie paintings at the Botanic Garden. That triggered a lot of public programs. At Openlands, we have what we call our Get Outside map. And you can put a filter in there about prairies, and it'll tell you about prairies you can visit throughout Illinois, and encourage everyone to do it. And we also know that less than 1/100th of 1% of the original prairie survives. There's a very special one called Bell Bowl Prairie that you've read about recently that is threatened, and we hope a positive resolution can result from that. But moving further north, up into Lake County, there's the Liberty Prairie Reserve, another great model of public-private partnership, almost 6,000 acres, and we've been involved with that for years. One of our most valued partners is the Libertyville Township Open Space District. Now, this was the first township open space district established in the state of Illinois. And they've been working very quietly over the years, restoring land, piecing together this fragmented landscape to make it so much richer for wildlife and for people's enjoyment. And, one of the results of that is to see all the grassland birds that have come back, just extraordinary in this wonderful landscape. And in fact, today they're working on finalizing plans to restore another 177 acres. So it's such an impressive record, and I think it illustrates that we have to stay with this. It's incremental, it's step by step, it's project by project, it's policy by policy. So, further north yet, in Illinois and Wisconsin, is our first National Wildlife Refuge, Hackmatack. It's the first for the Milwaukee-Chicago region. It's an extraordinary resource. About 8,000 or 9,000 acres are presently protected. We hope to more than double that. 1,000 acres have been added just in the past year or so. One of the most recent that Openlands acquired is a peat bog. And, peatlands, more than any other vegetative types, sequesters incredible amounts of carbon, and even more so than our great forests. So this has climate implications, it has economic implications, it has quality of life implications. But that wildlife refuge would not exist but for our senior senator, Senator Durbin. Now, granted, tremendous grassroots support that came together, developed the vision, but how did it happen? Our senator stepped in, and he was there at the dedication. I've been so fortunate for more than 18 months to work with Senator Durbin's staff, helping them develop a next century civilian conservation corps. The Renew Conservation Corps Act that Senator Durbin introduced is by far the most comprehensive and holistic, the most equitable in terms of encouraging people of diverse backgrounds to develop new careers and to address so many of the challenges we have with deferred maintenance on our wonderful natural resources and open spaces, but creating them in areas where they don't exist, addressing climate and quality of life. So, Openlands, we're a nonpartisan, not-for-profit, but we honor individuals who have made extraordinary commitments to the environment. And I think this next video will make it very clear that we had no trouble in choosing Senator Dick Durbin for Openlands 2021 Conservation Leadership Award. Please enjoy the video.
We are experiencing a new crisis. It's our duty as citizens to do our part in this country.
Keep ecosystems intact as much as we possibly can. to keep the world from continuing to move toward a climate crisis, and also to protect the world's biodiversity.
We need a powerful force who are trained and capable to do what needs to be done across the country and in localities.
Illinois used to have 20-some million acres of prairie, and now we have less than 0.1%.
In contrast to local entities like our forest preserves, the federal government has almost unlimited resources. And they also kind of set the tone. So when they're talking about investing in our environment, it's really important to people on the local level like me, because that's kind of the framework in which we operate.
This really is a career. It's a practice. We need to make sure that young people understand that civic participation requires a lot of skills beside just that determination and community organizing. Those are many tools that are in the toolkit, but it takes a lot to get it done.
Not only does it bring the community together, but it also helps with bettering the oxygen. It cleans the air. It gets rid of carbon dioxide.
We live in a complex ecosystem, so air, water, land are all tied together. When we can restore habitat on land, it cleans the water that drains into our rivers and streams and into the lakes. So restoring habitat in natural areas is absolutely vital to the quality and quantity of our freshwater resources.
We can't afford to lose these things if we don't maintain the remnants that we have and create even larger parcels by restoration. We suffer the likelihood of extinction of numerous plants and animals.
Senator Dick Durbin is the senior senator from the state of Illinois. He bears a respect for the dignity of all human beings. I think he is the model for a United States senator.
Senator Durbin has been all about conservation, whether it's on land or involving rivers, streams, and the Great Lakes for his entire term of public service.
He's got a great, easy manner. You almost want to do anything he tells you to do just because he's such a good guy.
He's not a grandstander. He builds coalitions, he listens and works with his colleagues, and he proposes common sense solutions to some of the problems that we face.
Dick has a special interest in everybody. He speaks to the people in a way that people really understand and get it. And he is so very well respected for his commitment to all the people, and that makes him very special.
I'm very grateful to the senator, not only for his work on behalf of our healthcare system, but his work on behalf of our environment.
Leaders like Senator Durbin can't do it alone. They need grassroots civic powerhouses like Openlands and so many others that can help support that leadership effort.
They all work together to bring the voices of citizens to our government.
Luckily, our region in the Chicago metro area is one that has among the largest concentrations of great civic organizations. And that combination of congressional leadership from folks like Senator Durbin and the on-the-ground civic action, it's a match made in heaven.
There was an opportunity to pull these rail tracks to conserve this area, and we actually reached out to Openlands. That day, I think that the conservation piece really kicked in for me. Planting trees that will create shade for a generation to come. You get these little tidbits, just these little glimpses that what you're doing is really right. The Bronzeville Black Metropolis National Heritage Area Act really describes the story of a people moving from the Jim Crow South to find a better life for their family and their future. We have a huge stewardship responsibility in having more than half of the city's cultural assets within our heritage area boundaries. It's not just the stewardship of preserving those sites, but also making those sites come alive so that they're still relevant today. There are more than 50 national heritage areas today. They really were birthed in Illinois. The I&M Canal had actually been the first, and the success of the economic development there allowed their commission to go for 30 years and be recommissioned. The thing that Senator Dick Durbin has done is provide the shadow legislation that basically says, Congressman Rush introduced this, but I'm behind it, and it's that important.
I love Barney Frank's definition of government. It's the word we use for the things we do together. It's us working together to create a viable future for our children and grandchildren.
Before it was farmland, it was prairie. So we're actually going all the way back to prairie. And this is going to be for kids we haven't even met yet. And that's true. I mean, there's going to be a lot of people that won't realize how this all came together, but they're going to benefit from a scale that 19,000 acres can only do. The Medina National Tallgrass Prairie is the first national tallgrass prairie in the country. It's a little over 19,000 acres. Congressman Durbin at the time, now Senator Durbin, had a lot to do with that. The history of the Medina establishment is pretty amazing. It was a large political effort, a lot of grassroots efforts, a lot of organizations that work in conservation in the area all saw the potential to have 19,000 acres as a park. We had unanimous consent from the congressional folks, both Senate and House, to support the legislation. Prior to that, the 24-member Sangmeister Commission voted unanimously to accept the concept plan that was brought forward. Those are two remarkable events.
Medina National Tallgrass Prairie began as part of a plan to reuse the Joliet Army ammunition plant.
There's still about 1,400 acres of land inside Medina that the Army still has to clean up. And that, it's been 25 years. And I think that's something, again, that, at the congressional level, there's cleanup issues all over the United States relative to base closures. And I talk about jobs, I mean, that is a lot of jobs, and they're green jobs. A lot of the stuff that can be removed from Medina can go in the county landfill. And the legislation allowed for that. This is a way to save taxpayers' money.
Nearly anywhere you go in Illinois, you'll find wonderful natural areas that Senator Dick Durbin has had a hand in helping to preserve and protect. And these provide recreation for millions of Illinois residents and other visitors, but they're vital for our air and water and habitat for many creatures.
There's nothing like the National Wildlife Refuge system in the world. It's the only system of lands and waters in the world that's solely dedicated to fish and wildlife conservation. There's really nothing like it. Hackmatack National Wildlife Refuge is one of the newer units established just 10 years ago. And significantly, it's a first for the Chicago metropolitan area. You'll notice that the refuge is designed as a donut, a circular area with a hole right in the middle. It's an interesting concept because it suggests that it's actually going to be a conservation area where many partners invest. The U.S. Fish and Wildlife Service's refuge portion are nodes around the outer ring of that donut, and then there are connecting pieces that was always thought that partners would fill that in. It started with actually a question: why can't we have a national wildlife refuge here? So that started a big conversation. Started small, but it grew, and it was all driven at the grassroots level. The Friends of Hackmatack and the organizations that were part of it, including Openlands, went from community to community and spoke to elected official, from elected official to other elected officials, and built support slowly. Then they reached out to Senator Durbin and said, could you help us get this in front of the Fish and Wildlife Service, and asked them to do a feasibility study. And so he did. Senator Durbin was key to the formation of the refuge, and he's led that charge ever since.
We are enormously fortunate to live near and have access to fresh water, clean fresh water from Lake Michigan. The Great Lakes in total are the largest source of fresh surface water on the planet. Restoration is important to cleaning water because we live in ecosystems. So you have water and land and air all working together, and when we restore habitat on land, it improves our water quality and water quantity. You know, healthy woodlands can sequester more rainwater and clean it, allow it to infiltrate, recharge our underground water supply, than degraded woodlands, where the water can run off into rivers and streams, carrying sediment and making them less healthy.
For really over a century, we've been demanding a lot of the Great Lakes, but we haven't been providing back to the Great Lakes. So the Great Lakes Restoration Initiative has been our once in several generations opportunity to provide that investment so that the Great Lakes can be healthy, because if the Great Lakes are healthy, we can be healthy here in the Midwest.
We need to demonstrate that we can be caring stewards of this precious resource and that we're not wasteful. All of us need to learn to live within our water budgets.
I think Senator Durbin has almost single-handedly helped us understand that even though these water bodies look large, they're incredibly fragile and they can be mistreated.
I am so excited about an initiative that Senator Durbin has taken the lead on to create a 21st century civilian conservation corps, a mechanism to create jobs for so many people who need them, doing the vital work of restoring our natural areas.
The Civilian Conservation Corps was important and provided such a blossoming of hope. In the 30s, our farmland was in terrible shape, and the Civilian Conservation Corps came in with the goal to use natural means to control the variances of weather. It really lifted the spirits of the whole country.
We thought this would be a program that could be replicated, updated, modified to meet current circumstances.
The renewed conservation effort, sort of the new CCC approach, it does a lot for a lot of people.
So there are a number of ways in which I think the new program will be different from the old one. You know, as I looked at pictures of Civilian Conservation Corps members as a history teacher, it was always men. So women will have an opportunity to serve. There will be no age restrictions. When my father was in the Civilian Conservation Corps, it was young men. And of course, it'll be inclusive in a way that could not have been probably envisioned in the 1930s. So African American, Latinx, and other youth of color will have an opportunity to participate.
The Arborist Registered Apprenticeship Program is a 3-year program that pays to learn.
In the 3 months that I've been in this program, I've learned more about trees than I have in the 3 years that I've worked in forestry. We have to maintain them, we have to grow them, we have to understand them, we have to know what purpose they serve.
A lot of people who try to get into this industry sometimes needs at least 1 year of experience or at least some type of knowledge, some type of schooling, and a lot of times that is not available to certain people in different communities. And there's a way to make a career out of it without going to college or owing a lot of student loans, and it's something to care about.
This opportunity is very important to me personally because there was a lot of obstacles in my life, and when I found out about this program, I was like, okay, this is great. It's a good way of not only having hands-on experience with the work itself, but like with how to communicate. That's one way it's helping me for the long run.
I have found habitat restoration to be a restorative act, that it restores our bodies and our spirits, and I want to see that for everyone. So any program that can get more people working in the forest preserves, in our natural areas to improve habitat is going to make them better places for recreation and for other creatures, for everybody.
Senator Durbin has always listened. So because he listens, he has always been an understanding supporter of conservation, environmental causes across the board. It is fitting that he is the sponsor of the Civilian Conservation Corps because it's so people-centered.
Green jobs are an area of growth for the future. This will be an investment that will pay off for my grandchildren and for other people's grandchildren. I think the best way people can become engaged is to seek out advice from organizations like Openlands.
You can educate yourself and vote for candidates who promote water conservation and restoring our aging infrastructure. There's a lot we can do, and we will have to do as we try to address climate change.
We would not have places like Medewin and Hackmatack if it weren't for that beautiful, amazing partnership between our individuals and our grassroots and our elected officials as well.
I think civic participation means that our elected officials are going to hear us, and we're going to be able to trust what they tell us. And I think that's what Senator Durbin personifies. He both listens, he hears what we have to say. We also can believe what he's telling us.
Senator Durbin and his colleagues are fighting every day to bring reason and justice and goodness to the government that we elect.
Senator Durbin, I'm proud to know you. I'm even prouder to be able to say I'm a constituent of yours and that you represent me in the United States Senate. Thank you for everything you do for our air, our water, our people.
I just want to thank you for your commitment to the people of the state of Illinois, and in particular to Cook County.
We are proud that you are our senator and you are a national leader and, of course, a friend.
And congratulations to you for being the recipient of the Conservation Leadership Award.
We are here to celebrate you.
Congratulations, Senator Durbin, for getting the Conservation Leadership Award.
Congratulations to you, Senator Durbin, on receiving the Conservation Leadership Award from Openlands. You certainly deserve it.
I know you're not clapping for me. I'm Joanne Segren, chair of the Openlands Board of Directors, and I want to echo all of the wonderful things said about Senator Durbin. You are truly making a difference, and we really appreciate you. It is my great honor to give the 2021 Conservation Leadership Award to Senator Dick Durbin.
Well, it's all true. Let me say at the outset that for many of us, this is the biggest and maybe the first public gathering that we participated in a long, long time. And I know we've all taken care to protect ourselves and the people around us, but in the interest of public health, I just ask you to please refrain from exhaling during my speech. I want to acknowledge Toni Preckwinkle had to leave earlier, and for the kind things that she and others said, but also because the remarkable forest preserves of Cook County, the vision that went into that decision, And I know Tony's ready to work with us, and I'm happy to work with her to expand the trees and the forest. We need them now more than ever. And in addition, representing Governor Pritzker, we have Colleen Callahan, who is the director of the Illinois Department of Natural Resources. Colleen. Another great friend. What a great video that was, even the parts that said nice things about me. It really did fuel the spirit in terms of the Openlands ethic and purpose, but it also soothed the soul to know that we are preserving areas that future generations can enjoy, even if they don't remember our names. I want to thank the co-host, Commissioner Deb Shore, and she is going to be great in Region 5. And of course, Ambassador Faye Hartog-Levin for bringing us together. Thank you again, Faye, for kind words and leadership. Thanks to Joanne Segren, President Jerry Edelman, and the entire Openlands organization for this award. I don't view this recognition as a reward. I view it as a reminder that there is more work to be done in our nation. We need to leave for future generations a better world, and that's why you're here today. As you may know, long before this office was mine, it was in the hands of another man whom I happened to work for as an intern. He was an Illinois senator by the name of Paul Douglas. At the outset of World War II, Paul Douglas, then a University of Chicago economics professor and the Fifth Ward alderman in the city council, joined the Marines. A lot of people were doing that, but not many of them, like him, were 50 years old. 50. He was gravely wounded in combat in the South Pacific, and when he returned home, ran for office for the United States Senate, and they sent him on another mission in the Senate to fight against racial and economic injustice and for ethical government. Douglas also believed that we have a responsibility to leave this world better than we found it. His last great victory in Congress was a bill establishing the...
Durbin, earn your award. Save Belleville Prairie.
Thank you for being here.
Will you please save Belleville Prairie?
Why did you give federal funding to Amazon and the Chicago Rockford International Airport
Well,
to destroy a 10,000-year-old remnant prairie?
I am...
For Amazon, a 10,000-year-old prairie. Y'all love prairies here. We're the prairie state. Please, Dick Durbin, earn your award.
Conservation isn't destroying prairies.
Save Belleville Prairie.
So...
You have the power, Dick Durbin. Please save Belleville Prairie.
Some of you have read about this prairie situation with the Rockford Airport, and I want to acknowledge Director Callahan because we have suspended construction there for the time being for this very purpose, to recognize this prairie and to make sure that we treat it properly. I used to carry these banners, so I'm not going to be critical of these folks. I do want to... Well, if I'm not mistaken, the IDNR has suspended construction at least until November 1st. Is that right, Colleen? Yes. We care too. Back to the Indiana Dunes for a minute. I want to recount this chapter in history because it involved a man who was instrumental in my being here today. 30 years before I was elected United States Senator, I was an intern in Paul Douglas's office, a college intern. And the Indiana Dunes meant so much to him. He fought to preserve them against the entire Indiana congressional delegation. The entire delegation opposed him, as well as the steel mills, as you can imagine. And Douglas said something back then that I still remember to this day, and it's inspired me when it comes to conservation and work in this area. He said, "When I was young, I wanted to save the world. In my middle years, I would have been content just to save my country. Now I just want to save the Indiana Dunes." It's a reminder that these projects, which you heard about today on the video, and the ones which Openlands and others are committed to, may seem small in the vast scheme of things, but they do accumulate and create a situation where all of us can better appreciate what we've inherited. I am now the grandfather of 6 proudly, and I understand that desire to leave a better world even more. I'm also convinced more than ever that by saving the dunes and these pristine natural wonders, like the Medewan tallgrass prairie, what a story that was. When we announced base closures of the Joliet Arsenal, there was a feeling of outrage that we were going to lose this arsenal. As I reflect on it today, it was the most remarkable, good decision we could have made. We have turned that arsenal into many wonderful things, a national cemetery, an economic engine for the area with Centerpoint. But in the Medewan tallgrass prairie, we have preserved, as the film mentioned, one of the largest areas of tallgrass prairie, perhaps in the nation. And Hackmatack National Wildlife Refuge, I still remember that day so well because Ken Salazar was the Secretary of Interior who came here to dedicate it. Ken Salazar, I just spoke to him on the phone the day before yesterday. He is now our ambassador to Mexico, and we still work very closely together. But it was a wonderful thing, and local support by Openlands and other groups made such a difference. And in terms of our priorities, when they asked the people of Chicago, the Chicago Tribune, I believe it was, 10 years ago, what is the most significant thing about this city? What makes it different than any place else? People answered Lake Michigan, overwhelmingly Lake Michigan. We should never, ever take that for granted, and that's why I'm especially happy that Deborah's going into her job in preserving and protecting Lake Michigan. I had to shut down a little coal-fired ferry for a little while, but they came back and we finally found a way to deal with it. We are about protecting the Earth's fragile ecological balance, and we are preserving natural treasures where people can come to renew their spirits and reflect on why this world is worth defending. The first step to saving our world is, of course, weaning ourselves from our dependence on climate-destroying fossil fuel. With Joe Biden in the White House, Congress is on the verge of passing not one, but 2 historic new laws that will strengthen America's economy and protect our planet. The first is a bipartisan infrastructure deal. Biggest, most ambitious infrastructure plan in a generation. It invests in renewable energy, green jobs, and sustainable economic prosperity for all. We will pass it. And also the President's Build Back Better plan. This is the plan that includes the RENEW Act, which we've talked about on this video, to create a new civilian conservation corps for the 21st century. There are many people, I'm not the only one by any means, but there are many people involved in this. The first phone call I received was from Congressman Bobby Rush, and he said, "My kids need jobs. Could you support a conservation corps idea?" I said, "Of course I could." At the same time, Chris Coons of Delaware and others were talking to the president. He liked the idea too. We're this close to it. And I want to thank Openlands and West Monroe Partners for helping to shepherd the RENEW Act through. It is a brilliant idea, and its time has come again. I've done a few things outside the region, which I want to mention very, very briefly. When I first came to the United States Senate, the conservation groups came to me and said, "We need your help for the Red Rocks Wilderness in Utah." And I said, a couple problems. First, I don't represent Utah. And they said, well, the folks in Utah are opposed to it anyway. Shades of the Indiana Dunes came back to me. And they said, Bill Bradley's just retired and we need a sponsor. And I said, I really couldn't sponsor a wilderness area in Utah without seeing it. Be my guest, they said. So Loretta and I took off in February and went out to that southeastern edge of Utah and took a look at this magnificent piece of real estate. And I said, count me in. So for 20 years plus, I have been the sponsor of the Red Rocks Wilderness Plan. We have had some major success recently in negotiating acreage, but we owe a lot to none other than our favorite local son, Barack Obama, who as President of the United States designated Bears Ears and Grand Staircase Escalante as national monuments in Utah. Now, you know what happened when the other president came in and he took him to court, and we're still going to fight that fight. But Joe Biden has once again said he is committed to these monuments, just announced it the other day, and we're definitely going to see that happen. The last thing I'll mention, which is far away, is the Arctic National Wildlife Refuge. I used to get up on the floor and fight verbally with Ted Stevens every year about drilling in the Arctic National Wildlife Refuge. And he would always say to me, "You've never been there. You don't know what it even looks like. You haven't talked to the people who live around it. Don't tell me what about the future of the Arctic National Wildlife Refuge." So I decided to accept this challenge. And my son and I went on a camping trip in the Arctic National Wildlife Refuge next to the Canning River and spent 2 days there. It was a remarkable experience, and I couldn't wait for the next time that Stevens would say that on the Senate floor, and darn, it never happened again. But we have a president who, like me, believes that that area too is worth preserving, and I think it is. I hope you agree with me. I mentioned Paul Douglas, and I've been inspired by 2 other Pauls in my life. One, Paul Simon, who picked me up and dusted me off after a few election defeats, told me, we'll get him next time, and he was right, we did. The other was a buddy of mine and a pal I still miss to this day, and that was Senator Paul Wellstone. He used to say the goal of politics is not heaven on earth, but a better earth on earth. By tapping into our nation's deep reservoirs of civic engagement and love of this land, that is what Openlands does. You create a better earth on earth. I'm proud to receive this award, and I'm proud to be your partner. Thank you.
Congratulations to Senator Durbin, well deserved. At Openlands, we understand that caring for nature and our planet is something that no one person nor one organization can do alone. It takes the passion and dedication of a great many partners and volunteers working with organizations and elected officials to enact the systematic changes that will create a more equitable and livable world. For almost 60 years, Openlands has been proud to offer opportunities for leaders and volunteers to connect with our mission and to drive policy solutions for our region's most pressing issues. We welcome new volunteers and advocates of every generation to join us in becoming human allies to continue the work of strengthening conservation efforts in our region and increasing the resiliency of our nation and our world. For these reasons and many more, I am very proud to serve on Openlands Board of Directors, and I'd like to ask my fellow board members to please stand. Please stand. And thank you. Thank you for your generosity and ongoing commitment to Openlands. And I know there were board members standing on Zoom as well. I would also like to thank our tireless staff, led by Jerry Edelman, for your dedication to your work and to our region year after year. And I'd like you to please stand as well. A shining example of the impact that people, organizations, and government can have when we work together is Openlands Tree Keepers program. This year, Tree Keepers marks its 30th anniversary, and to help celebrate, please join me in welcoming Jerome Scott, District Forester at the Chicago Park District, and Tree Keeper number 452 to the stage for some celebratory remarks.
Thank you for the very nice introduction, and a special thanks to the Openlands staff who tapped me for this honor and privilege. Thanks again to you all. If you're going to talk about tree keepers, well, if you're me about to talk about tree keepers, I'd like to emphasize that it is a members-driven effort. If you see a bundle of tree keepers doing something somewhere over there, very often it focuses back on an individual tree keeper who said, I think those trees need some help. Or sometimes it will be a professional like me who will drag them in. I happen to be one of the few people who shares both roles. In order to get to be that tree keeper person, it's pretty straightforward. You take the tree keeper course and then you show up and volunteer. Tree keeper course teaches you fundamentals of urban tree care and a few other things you may or may not want to know: how to plant, how to prune, tree pests, other tree pests, tree identification, construction damage, that's one of my favorites. And then you take your knowledge and go out and see how you can apply it to the public trees of the Chicago area. Openlands provides the logistical support, not least of which, of course, is maintaining the course at all, and bringing in various experts in the field to teach those subjects I just listed. And put it that way, the system works pretty well. Public managers like me want tree keepers to come around and knock on the door and say, hey, I saw something. I saw this tree issue, that one, or I want to do this. Sometimes they do just want to point out problems, but very often they want to solve those problems, and they're a good bunch to do it. So currently, there are in excess of 2,200 tree keepers. In order to continue my remarks, I have to kind of step back to 2017. I did a quick estimate. There were probably about 1,800 tree keepers then, which is a fair amount. 2017 is important for me because it's sort of a hinge year in the middle of the Chicago Park districts and the rest of Chicago as well in addressing the emerald ash borer problem. We had been removing ash trees for about 4 years, removing them very aggressively, completely drained almost all our forestry resources. And we also managed to find some money, so thank you to the Chicago taxpayer, to double our tree planting effort in the Chicago Park District. From about 4,000 trees to from about 2,000 trees annual to about 4,000 trees per year. The reason I say 2017 is important because it takes about 3 years and you have to start pruning those young trees. It's very easy to prune a young tree. Many people in this room have done it. I saw some over there. It is very difficult to prune 4,000 young trees every year, peppered throughout Chicago. Add on top of it that your staff is maxed out, and nobody's going to write you an additional check to have a private fund for that. So I get to sit in my office and look at those numbers and look at the map of Chicago and scratch my head and say, 1,800 tree keepers set up work days. I'm a tree keeper. I'll set up some work days. So in 2017, I set up a handful of work days. I set up 9 pruning work days, and tree keepers matched me. For some reason, some great coincidence, they also set up 9. There were 18 work days pruning trees in the Chicago Park District. 2017 went well. 18, we upped it a bit, up to a total of 34 work days. I did 17, again, even split, working well, going in the right direction. In 2019, there were 48 pruning work days, and I did fewer than before. And of course, what comes after 2019? 2020, right? So in 2012, we're going in the right direction. 2019, those 48 pruning work days pruned in excess of 2,300 trees. It's not chump change. That's a lot. So, well, is the bar up there yet? So basically, they didn't stop for 2020. We paused from March to July. That is tree keepers, not Park District, the Park District kicked out the tree keepers from the park. We kicked out all volunteers. Volunteering was against the rules and shut down from the middle of March until July. Despite losing a third of the year, we kept the pruning numbers up. And you notice that they put 2021 up there with no little asterisk saying we're not done yet. So with that said, I'd like to say again, thank you very much to the tree keepers. Thank you especially for rising to the occasion in this way. I now have to lead almost no tree keeper work days in the Chicago parks. They are led by tree keepers who care about parks. And since there's a table of them over there and probably a few others throughout the room, heck, I can do it too. Stand up and take a bow. I think I'm out of time, so I'd just like to point out that it is a 12-month out of the year effort, so you don't have to ask me what I do in the winter.
Thank you, Jerome. Your commitment to tree keepers continues to make it such an impactful program in the city and region. Good afternoon. I'm Raed Mansour, and I'm proud to be a new member of the Openlands Board of Directors just this year. I'm also Tree Keeper 1548. And I serve as the Director of the Office of Innovation at the Chicago Department of Public Health. It gives me great joy then to announce that Openlands will receive the Special Recognition Award from the Illinois Arborist Association for bringing the first Arborist registered apprenticeship program to the state of Illinois. Congratulations to Openlands staff for this innovative and exemplary work. Staff will be at the door as you exit to collect both your name tag and donation envelopes. I hope you will consider making an additional gift to support Openlands' mission. It is thanks to all of you, our generous supporters, that we can continue making such an impact in Chicago and beyond. Thank you for your great support.
That's it.
This concludes our program for today. One last note, at your table, the person with the birthday closest to May 1st may take the centerpiece home. Enjoy. Thank you for coming, and have a wonderful afternoon.